Tell the audience who you are. Yes, everybody knows who Linda Ronstadt is. Superstar, one of the creative legends of California-style country rock, whatever you want to call it. But who are you?
Well, in terms of singing, I've just always considered myself basically a soprano. You know, I sang a lot of different stuff, and I've never thought that I made, you know, the most important stamp on pop music or anything like that. But what I did that was different from other people, I think, was that I sang a very diverse range of music. And it wasn't arbitrary that the reasons that I did that were not arbitrary. They were very deliberate. And they have a footing in my childhood. I always say that I never sang any style of music that I hadn't heard in my household growing up before I was the age of 10. I've talked to visual artists that say if they didn't know horses, for instance, when they were a child growing up, they don't try to draw them. And I feel that way about music. If I haven't heard it when I was a little child, I can't approach it with any kind of authenticity.
Well, you've said and you've written that you were shy as a child.
Terribly, yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, you know, I think it's a natural thing for animals to not like to be stared at. And because often in the animal kingdom, if someone's staring at you, they want to eat you. So I think I just went along with nature in that way. I remember when I was a little girl, I was always hiding behind my mother's legs, and it was very hard to become a performer because I loved to sing and I loved to rehearse. But getting on stage meant everybody was looking at you. So I just look at my feet. So people ask me about different times of different periods of music, and I can usually remember what kind of shoes I was wearing, you know, because I was looking at my feet.
Well, how did you overcome the shyness?
I didn't. You know, it just was with me my whole life. You know, I try to compensate for, I try to pretend I wasn't shy by acting bold or by acting stupid. I don't know. But I wasn't ever able to really get rid of it. To this day, I really don't like a big group of people. I like a quiet conversation. My idea of a great dinner party is 20 people or 10 people who have known each other for at least 20 years. No strangers, you know.
Well, one reason I wanted to ask you that question is I envision any number of people who may be watching this interview who have a child or some other relative or know somebody who's very talented but also very shy. Could you give them a piece of advice or counsel?
Well, I think it's hardwired. My father was fairly shy and he was very quiet. I'm shy and noisy. You know, I don't know how that worked out. But I think it's hardwired, and I think you just have to respect that in people and give them some room for it, you know. You
talked a little bit about living the wild life at the height of your career. Was there a time?
I didn't live a very wild life. What's going on around me, but I wasn't, you know, much of a participant.
Well, I want to follow up on that. Was there a time when you were swept up in drugs, partying, steamy relationships, and so forth?
I don't know about the steamy relationships. I wasn't much of a partier. What I really liked to do, and I never liked drugs, I have to say. I tried everything. Well, I didn't try everything. I tried several drugs. I didn't try injectables. I wasn't interested in psychedelics. And if I did cocaine, it just made me really nervous. You know, it made my nose bleed. So I thought, well, why do I need this? But some people like it. I don't know why. You were traveling, correct me if I'm wrong, at one point mostly with males. I mean, this is what rock bands were. What was that like? How did you handle that? Well, I swore a lot. I started swearing a lot. I was very happy when I could finally afford to hire some woman to go with me, you know, to help me sort of pack and unpack and put on makeup and do girl things. But I don't know. I was lucky. I had a lot of smart guys in my band. They were smart. They were readers. They were well educated. They were funny. They were nice, you know. But men on the road are men on the road. They're men on the road. They're always on the hunt. You know, they're always out looking for that elusive woman. But, you know, what we mainly did was we'd go into each other's rooms and play music. Musicians are playing music all the time. A professional musician's probably going to, you know, a guitar player's going to have his guitar in his hand probably 8 hours out of 24 every day. And that's how they get really good. And how you know a musician is they can't put that guitar down. It's not like they have to practice. It's not like they have to make themselves go pick the guitar up and practice. That's not going to be somebody who's ever going to turn out to be a professional. The professional guy is going to be the one that you can't pry that guitar out of his hand. You know, you can't get it away from him. He's just playing it all the time. Well, sort of candidly put, bluntly put, how'd you keep these guys off of you, or did you? Oh, well, that's kind of a silly question. It's a really good idea not to mess around with anybody in the band. You know, that's kind of rule number one. It's a funny thing, but there's a scene, Joseph Conrad's The Heart of Darkness. I don't know if you read that, but it's a wonderful opening where they talk about how provincial the life of sailors really is, because they're on the boat all the time, which was like the bus for us. So they only see each other, and we kind of were like that. You know, we had this little group dynamic that would start, and we just knew about our own little issues. We'd go to Chicago or Detroit or Memphis or wherever we'd go. There would be different places, but we'd stay pretty much the same, keep our own company.
I don't know if I've ever heard anybody use that metaphor before, although it strikes me as apt, that when you're traveling with a band, you know, first one place then another, it's not unlike being a sailor.
It really is. It's the same thing, you know.
That when you're on the bus, let's say,
different kind of tattoos.
That you're sailing along the highway, but then you reach a port, and it's a little like sailors coming into port.
You go looking for chicks and grog. But I was not looking for chicks and grog.
At a young age, because you were a precocious top flight performer, there weren't that many women, correct me if I'm wrong, who were performing at or near the top with some of the greatest names in rock music. What was that like?
Well, we were confused a lot. I think we had strange, we didn't know whether we were supposed to be domestic and nurturing and at home sewing and cooking and taking care of our men, you know, and minding babies, or whether we were supposed to be independent and out there running around, you know, redefining the universe. It was complicated. And to add to that, Rolling Stone, in its infinite wisdom, had declared that, you know, funk was God at some point. And everybody was chasing funk. So I dressed myself up like Moonbeam McSwine, and I got in a pen with pigs, and I had my picture taken for my album cover, because I was just trying to make fun of that, you know. I thought, if you can't get funkier than sitting in a pig pen.
Well, for the uninitiated, and that would include me, what's the difference between funk and rock and roll?
You know, funk had a whole other concept in terms of you know, you had to have really hard rocking, you know, clearly defined rhythms, somehow kind of scratchy guitars. I don't know what it meant. You know, people that try to make those hard and fast rules aren't musicians. They really aren't. Musicians are just chasing a dream. They're chasing a story. They're trying to tell a story in some kind of way. And you make these decisions about what kinds of guitar textures you want, what kind of vocal textures you want, at incredibly fast speed, without any kind of, there's no real conscious deciding. You're not thinking, oh, today I'm going to go growly in my voice. You know, you're just singing. And for me, it was always running a tape. I was running like a film of a story in my mind, and I was just describing it in sound. So, you know, when people try to say, well, you know, you have to sound like this in order to be in this category of music, rock and roll, well, what is that? I don't know. I mean, I never thought of myself as a rock and roll singer. I thought of myself as a singer who sometimes sang rock and roll, and sometimes sang Mexican music, and sometimes sang standard songs, and sometimes sang operetta. You know, if I could get away with it, I'd try it, because I admired it.
You were viewed as being absolutely a bombshell. You were totally successful with your music, and over a wide range of music. Surely someone said to you, Linda, you should get married. You can have any man in the world.
No, I couldn't have. You know, it always looks like there's a line at the front door, but really it's not. What is it? In the beginner's mind, there are many choices. In the Zen mind, there is only one. That's an old Zen koan. You know, there's a bunch of guys that want you. I don't know what they want.
You never thought about getting married? Never?
Well, maybe when I was 3 and wanted a wedding dress. I don't know, you know.
Well, why do you suppose that is?
I think my mother might have had something to do with that, you know. Not that I don't think my mother had an unhappy marriage. I think she had a very happy marriage. But my mom wanted to be a scientist, and World War II came along right at the point where she was starting with a kind of a low-level science job that she would have been able to work up in. And she had 3 kids to raise, 4 kids eventually, and I think that it was always a little bit of a disappointment. She used to go back to school from time to time and sort of get more, you know, learn more stuff, but I think she always sort of said to me, go out and have a life, you know, you don't just have to get married, there are alternatives to it.
But eventually you wanted children?
I did want children, yeah. I have 2 adopted children.
And as objectively as you can, very hard to be objective about this, what kind of life did they have? As you were still on the road, you were still
I wasn't on the road much. I pretty much quit traveling when they were born. You know, I really wanted to be there. I didn't want to miss anything. I quit while they were little. I didn't go on the road at all. And then as they got a little bit older, I started finding out how much it cost to put them in school. I found out how much tuition in a private school, I almost had a heart attack. And then I'd arrange to go on the road in the summer when they could go with me. And they loved it because we didn't have any TV at my house. So we get on the bus and they could watch TV.
Do your children, they're both, what, in their 20s now?
One's 19 and one's 22. But they're almost grown.
But do they have a sense what a world megastar you were at the height of your career?
I was just mom, you know. I was mom, get me another glass of milk. My daughter, for instance, until she was about 8 years old, didn't know I'd ever sung in English because I sang in Spanish the whole time that I was in all of her childhood. We were on the road with a Mexican band. And she had Mexican costumes, you know, that she would wear. And she was learning to dance and throw her skirts around. My son one time asked me, Mom, why didn't you ever sing rock and roll? So, you know, they like something else. They're interested in different kind of music.